So early hours of the morning, I just want to talk a bit about materialism as a concept, as an idea. Firstly, I want to get something out of the way. I hope that I don't come across as preachy or holier than thou in this video because it's absolutely not my intention. Um, in fact, I'm coming from a point of knowing what I want, and I guess it's kind of a self awareness of um, that gives me pause for reflection as well. So I think with materialism, there's a fundamental truth, and that is most people, if they're being absolutely honest, certainly want a comfortable life. But I think most people across the world actually want material comfort. Now, what are the basics? Food, housing, stability. But those are the basics, and many people don't have those. Um, we get extremes in this world, whether it be children starving to death in Yemen, people whose homes have been washed away in natural disasters, people facing homelessness. So there are those extremes that people find themselves in really hard times, and it's depressing. That's the world we live in. But I think a basic desire for material comfort comes beyond those basics. So someone facing like the worst challenges will want at least at first the basic solutions to those. But when people are kind of getting by or they're doing a little bit better than getting by, some people are going to be content with that. But I think a lot of people, if they're being totally honest, if you said to someone, "Would you like to win the lottery?" I think most people would say yes. Some people might say, "Oh no, no, money doesn't buy happiness." I have a bit of a problem with this idea money doesn't buy happiness, and I don't want to make this video about the idea of money because that's for another video, although obviously it's closely tied. But I think it's just a slightly dishonest statement. I mean, I know what it means. Money in itself isn't a guarantee of happiness. There's many wealthy people who are not happy. So that's not exactly a guarantee of happiness. But one thing that is irrefutable is that money buys the means for stability. It buys the means for many things. And it's true there's things you could do that don't require money, but there are a lot of things. The simple fact of the matter is you need money. So that's just true. So therefore saying money doesn't buy happiness is a bit misleading. It's true that money doesn't guarantee happiness. It's true that money alone is not the answer to happiness. I mean, there's been happiness studies and they have shown that some of the happiest countries in the world, i.e., the countries with the highest level of contentment, are not necessarily the richest countries. In fact, I believe Bhutan came pretty high. Now, Bhutan is a middle income country. It's not absolutely at the bottom rungs of poverty, but it's certainly not wealthy. It's, unless I'm mistaken, somewhere around the middle in the GDP ratings. It's a small mountainous kingdom, but apparently it has a large degree of contentment. Now, could that be because it's largely unspoilt? There's little pollution there. I don't know. That could be one factor, but I think there's probably other factors there. I do agree with those who say that the size of a country's GDP and how wealthy a country is not the only barometer of human development. I agree with that. I mean, you get some of the Gulf states are incredibly wealthy, but they've appalling human rights records and very little freedom. So it's not necessarily going hand in hand that the wealthier a country, the better life is for its citizens. I think more often than not, it, if a country has resources, if it has a high GDP, that obviously provides the means or the potential at least. This all comes down to how governments utilize that, but it provides the potential for creating as much higher quality of life as possible. But anyway, sticking specifically to the issue of materialism, because I'm not an economist and I'm not going to get into economic theory, Marxism and capitalism and like in depth into those theories. I just want to sort of touch the surface. Um, I see a lot of people. It's very common in the United States, but I've seen it in China as well. I've seen it in communist China. Ironically, it's actually very widespread in Red China. Um, and it's something that you can see all over the world. There is this obsession with having the latest smartphones, the latest technology, the latest fashion, you name it. Now, I believe that people's own money is up to them how they spend it. Um, I do think if someone's a multimillionaire and they do nothing to help people who are in a, who are struggling, that's not exactly something to respect. But ultimately, I think that people's own money is their own money. So someone wants to spend a ridiculous amount of money on something that other people might find silly or materialistic, that's entirely their business. But I do find that the more materialistic people get, the more desensitized they become to people who are less fortunate. And I'm not saying this is some sort of radical socialist statement. I'm not talking about, well, we should divide all the means of production or anything like that. I don't think that's the way forward. I'm not anti capitalist because I've enjoyed capitalism. I'm certainly not wealthy, but like everyone, I like my comforts. So anyone who enjoys material comforts cannot really be dead set against capitalism because it's free market economics that brings that. Even in China, which is a hybrid system, you know, what's incredible about China is you don't, anyone who visits the country will see that you don't find young people in particular are, they may be fed communist ideology, Marxist Leninist ideology, or Xi Jinping thought, but there's also a huge interest, like with young people all over the world, in material things. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just an observation. I mean, I would cite the story or the situation I had experience. I was on the Shanghai subway, young guy, must have been, I guess, early 20s, looked at my phone and said, "Why is that such a small phone?" Now, it was a very basic, cheap model, but it was mildly irritating. I was thinking, whoa, none of your business. But it's just kind of a testament to the world that we're in. And that's, perhaps in other countries people wouldn't be as outspoken. I don't know. But that's the only thing about materialism. I think it can desensitize people. I'm not saying that people who are very material oriented don't care about anyone else. I don't think that's not what I'm saying. But I do think that it can be, when people trivialize of little time for people who are financially well off and they take it for granted. It's not like it's not a jealousy thing, and it's not like some sort of radical socialist statement. Like I say, if someone's worked hard and they're well off, that's best wishes to them. But I do find it hard to respect people who are well off, particularly the super rich, although the mega rich have to be philanthropists because if they weren't, it would just be, they know it would be unforgivable. So Bill Gates, for example, is a huge philanthropist. But even people who are pretty well off, like um, either rich or pretty comfortable, I think, it's I don't think they should be obliged to give a certain amount to charity. I think that would be a bit controlling. But people who throw around money and take it for granted. For anyone who's ever had financial anxiety, and believe me, I have, it's quite galling to see people take that for granted. How does this connect to materialism? Well, it connects, I guess, insofar as when you have the means to buy things through working hard, through accumulating income, accumulating capital, one way or another, I think people have the right to do with it what they want, to enjoy the fruits of the reward, so to speak. But even if they've worked hard, I don't like the mentality of sort of people who stick their nose up at anyone who's struggling and think, oh well, they must be lazy or they must be, people are in different situations. You cannot judge someone until you've walked in their shoes, and I guess judgment's part of human nature. We all do it. I've done it. I'm not innocent in this regard. But I think that materialism is something we need to be a little bit wary of. I'm not going to lie. I like things. Okay? I buy glossy magazines. I collect books. I I spend quite a lot on photography. I have a very big DVD collection. So I'm materialistic in my own way. And I think most people, if they have the financial means, they are. Incidentally, I'm not well off. It's just like the things I have, that's like collected over a lifetime, basically. I'm not a hoarder, but, I've got a lot of things. Um, so, how will I conclude with this? I think that materialism in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, because really it just means, having things. And there's nothing wrong with if you enjoy something, why not enjoy it? Nothing wrong with that. But one thing that materialism or no amount of property, no amount of fashion or the best phones or any of that can ever really replace is basic human connections. Now, maybe some people are sociopathic and they don't like other people. Fine. But most people, on some level, need human relationships. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, I'm talking about friendship as well, family. People who don't have family, they have friends. People who don't have friends, well, they're lonely. So, this is something that materialism can never replace. And I hope it doesn't, incidentally, is that human connection. Now, it goes without saying, sometimes human connections come from having the financial means to, go to parties and all the rest of it. But it's also, I find, someone who's rich is actually in some ways just as vulnerable as someone who's poor. Why? Because you could get a situation where someone suddenly wins the lottery and then they find they suddenly have new friends. And it's the old story. What happens? These people come along and they're suddenly their best friends. I hope if I'm ever in a situation where I'm that fortunate to win the lottery, or to get some sort of big cash lump like that, that I don't let it get to my head, and that's easier said than done. I think even smart people, the power of money can be profound. So I don't think materialism is inherently bad. And I don't think, incidentally, maybe I'm expanding this out a little bit, but let's think, for instance, of um, charity workers. I think there's this idea that if someone's involved in the charity sector, they should be living in rags and spinning loincloths or something like that. It's ridiculous. Why shouldn't someone whose profession is in the charity sector not, enjoy life as much as everyone else. That's absurd. The idea that they shouldn't, the idea, like people sometimes get very uppity about that if they see a charity CEO wearing a nice suit. Well, I agree that they should sort of set an example, and certainly the money needs to all be accounted for. But some people, and you get it a lot in this country, have this stuck up idea that if someone's involved in the charity sector, they should be living a frugal lifestyle. That's absolute nonsense. Why can't someone be benevolent and care about others whilst also having a comfortable life? It's just stupid to think that that can't be the case. Um, I don't agree with the idea that you need to suffer to help out others suffering. Sometimes, definitely on issues like human rights and so on, it means sticking your neck out. Sometimes that's very dangerous. So that's true. But anyway, going off on a tangent, I'll leave it there.